We are on the Kuf. I am Kuf Ayin here on the base. Pretty sure, yeah. Kuf Ayin here on the base. Up to Rabu Shmuel, which is about 11 lines from the bottom. Rabu Shmuel, the Army Travayu. He says that Midiraisa, a Milva Alpeh, is not going from Yarshim and not from Kukas, and that's what we've been going with the whole time. Right? When there's a Alpah and there's no star, you can't be going from Yarshim because the Shibud was not in place, it wasn't part of the estate, doesn't transfer to them, and it can't take from the Kukas, like we saw before, because of essentially whether you say that Shibud is Derais or it's the Rabbanan, it's not gonna, you can't take away from the Kukas where it's Balpeh because there's no Kyle. People are not gonna have a heads up before they buy something. My timer, Shibud will have Derais. What's his reasoning? Because he holds Shibud is not Deraisa. So since there's no Shibud Deraisa, you don't really even need this svara of Koil, but that's going to be the explanation of what the difference is between Gaiba from Shtar or Gaiba Balpeh. That's going to be what is going to be enough Kamina. Why you only by Gaiba Balpeh you can't be Gaiba from the Kukas, but Bashtar the Kabum Masakim says only Tunnel Dallas with May love and that you can. The Yechan Reb Shimon and Lakish Tami Travayu Mil Balpeh Gaiba Bein Min Ayoshim. My time is Shibuda Dairaisa. They're going like this, that Shibuda is Dairaisa, and therefore you can be Gaiba from Yarshim, and you can be Gaiba from Lukukas. Now, even in Lukukas, we're still going to have the Nafkamina, even though it sounds like it's saying you can be Gaiba from Lukukas Alpeh, and that's it. The Rishonim explaining, I'm going to see it in the Gemara later on, it means to say that they could be Gaiba Melekuchas Balpeh, meaning Shibud is Deraisa. With Deraisa, you could be Gaiba from Melekuchas, but Midirabanan, we don't want that. Because of Seder Melekuchas, we don't want that people will buy things and not realize that they're buying something from someone who has a pre-existing Shibud, and therefore they'll have it taken away from them. So the Chum Geyser that there's not going to be a shibud l'kukas. That you can't take away from the kukas on a derabanan, on a milval pet. In fact, the Gemara Meisvei. The Gemara asks on Rav and Shmuel that they said like Ula that shibud lav deraisa. A chayfer bar b'shusarab. Someone who dug a pit. A man is in the middle of digging a pit in the Sharab. He's in the middle of digging it. The nafal of shar. And as he's digging the pit, which he wasn't allowed to do, a shar fell on him. Shar was walking near Sharab and fell on this man. Baharga, and the shar killed the man. Potter. The owner of the shar does not have to pay for his shar killing a man. This man was not supposed to be digging a pit in Sharab. And when he does so, he's basically liable for anything that happens to him. The owner of the shar does not have to pay for his shar tripping on a bar that appears in Sharab and killing someone. And not only that, if the shar falls down into this pit and kills the pit digger, and then that causes the shar to die, Yarshay Habal, Habar, the Yarshim of this man who was digging, who died underneath the shar, Chayav L'Shalom D'mei Shar L'Baila. They have to pay for the shar, right? It's a simple din. If someone digs a barber Sharabim, he's mechuyev to pay for the damage it does. So this person, in spite of the fact that the animal killed the Bal Habar, the Yarshim are going to have to pay for the damage that the shar died. So the Gemara wants to say, L'chayra, this is a raya. We said this Bal HaShar, this Bal Habar, the guy who's digging the pit died. So who has to pay his Yarshim? This is not this chiyuv of paying for the nezek that was done to the shar is not any better than a milval peh, right? There's no shtar on it. That which the owner of the bar, who it turns out died, and was saying his yashim have to pay. That chiyuv that he have is only a chiyuv of it's only a chiyuv of balpeh. So you see that even a chiyuv to yarshim, a chiyuv of yarshim balpeh, they have to pay the chayrich.
Apples and oranges, but a loan to a nesek.
Well, it's just it's a difference of how a chayv was created, but in the end, both of them created an obligation. So whether the obligation came about, right? When the kids sit down and say we have a bunch of chayvs to pay, does it make a difference to them if it was created because the father lent it, or because the father bought something and he said I'm going to pay for it, and he didn't pay for it yet? He was kind of something, and now he owes the money for. Or if it's because the father did a hezek, or if the father had a ksuba, whatever it is. In the end, it's on the debit side of the ledger. So why should it? The question is a shiur. The question is a chayv. Well, it's not a question. When we say milva peh, we don't mean milva b'shtar. I'm sorry, you're right. We say milva peh or milva b'shtar. We don't mean halva specifically. We mean a chayv that's represented by a shtar that came into being through a shtar, or came into being through orally. So the point is that this is also, it's not any worse than, it's only not better than a milva. Let's see how the Rashbam says it. So the Rashbam Yershi Bal Habar Chayav Nashal Alma Milva Peh Goyim in a Yershim. It doesn't really explain much. Okay.
You can't have a star for between a.
I understand you can't, but doesn't. So let's look at it from the other perspective. If we look at the reasoning behind it, right? The reason why a milval peh can't take away from the kuchas is because they have no notice. Those people who buy from the person who has this obligation have no way of avoiding. We want people to be able to buy things securely and not worry that it's going to be taken away from them. So when there's a milva b'shtar, they can have notice that people, it's recorded. They can go to the Secretary of State and they'll see that there's an obligation. But something that arises about that, they're not going to have any recourse. How are they going to protect themselves? If you think about it from that perspective, it makes sense.
And I think if someone got killed by a shore, there's going to be a call.
Okay, you can't say that. We have to follow what the Gemara says. The Gemara says determines for us what a call is.
So if someone got killed by a shore, I mean, there's not going to be a call.
There'll be a call that someone killed by a shore, but people are not going to realize that there's an obligation. They're not going to know who's chayiv. There's a car accident. Do you know whose fault it was? Do you know how deep the show? Do you know if it was in the Rosh Hashanah?
I think once an incident like that happens in the shtetl, everybody knows that okay, the shore also passed.
They're probably all gonna, like, half the people are gonna, I died, so who's gonna take care of his family? The guy whose shara was that killed him should pay for it. No, there'll be a lot of sympathy for that view.
There'd be more sympathy for for that.
They always have someone has to be made good. Who's going to make him good? Make him whole.
We'll take care of his son.
Right, the same. Okay. Amarav the law, Amarav b'sha'amid b'din. We're talking about where this case already came to Bezdin. So Bezdin, like you said, once it came to Bezdin, that means the Bezdin already paskin that before the man died, they paskin that he has to pay. So that also makes a koil. That's a conclusion. That's already written in the Bezdin. They have the B'din Torah. So that's like a shtar. In fact, the Marva Harga Ketani, how could you say that he was Aimid B'din? It says the animal fell on him and killed him. So how could you have a Din Torah before he died? Amravad Barhava Sha'asu Treif. We're talking about where the man didn't really actually die when the shar fell on him, but rather he became mortally wounded. So then he died a month later, and in the meantime there was Amid Bidin. In fact, the Gemara about Amr of Nachman Tani Tana Mace Bekavrai. He died and they buried him. So it's not talking about where he became a treif. It says he died and it was a treif, they wouldn't bury him. So it means he died immediately. So Gemara, the Kavru Hasam, and they buried him on the spot. So Gemara, the Yasvi Dani Apuma Debira B'chayvu. We're talking about this is a very interesting case. It happens to be the Bezdin was sitting on the park bench right next to this pit, next to the bar. The shar fell on him. The guy was about to expire. He was in his last breath. And the Bezdin says, he's chayiv. So you already have a Gemar din. And therefore, as the Kyle, it's a very peculiar case. It's a stretch.
Probably.
Yeah.
What's best to say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't dig over it.
It reminds me of like when I was a kid, you don't know the Sesame place, Sesame Street.
Yeah, sure.
Sesame Place. There was no, the Muppets. That's what I'm thinking of. There were the two judges, Waldorf and Statler, who stood on the side, and they commented on everything. I think there was the three Dayanim sitting on the park bench commenting. Chayev. Amar Papa. Hilchasa. Halacha is final. Halacha is milva al peh goyve min hayoshim. If someone's a milva al peh, he is goyve min hayoshim, but ain't a goyve min alakuchas. But he can't be goyve from lakuchas. Milva al peh, since there is a shibud. This means there's a shibud deraisa, or if it's because of seder shalitinol delis, they love it, even if you hold shibud is their abanon. But the bottom line is we don't want people not to be able to lend because they're scared the man's going to die and then the yash are going to be off the hook. But ain't a guy from Lakukas, but you can't be guy from Lakukas because you don't want Lakukas to lose out because they didn't hear about it. The reason for Yarshin is because you don't want people to be scared to lend money. What if the lender was the children? Bein a government al kukus, the less like color. If it's milval peh, there's no kyle, and you won't be able to get from the kukus. If instead of having a star with a which was written by a scribe and then signed by witnesses, it was just an IOU on a napkin, where the borrower wrote on a napkin, I owe Ruvain, owe Shimon $100. So that you're limited to only nechasim b'nei and you can't take from mishubadim because that is not going to have the coil of a real shtar. What happens if you have this IOU, but it wasn't left just as an IOU? You went to Bezdin and you got it Makuyim. You had the IOU confirmed in Bezdin. They wrote a hempik, they gave their stamp on it. Does that make it like a regular star that you could be goiva from Lakufas? Amalei, even so, it remains a non-full, it's not a full-fledged star, and therefore you can't use it to be goiva from the chasim mishubadim. There are three gittin that when a man is megarish as an isha that are invalid. V'imnisis, morning dovi. V'imnisis havlad kasha. But if they marry, nevertheless, if he uses this get and he then remarries on the basis of that get, the child is not a mamzer. That means midaraisa, it's a good get. Just midarabanan, we say he shouldn't. It's not valid, and he shouldn't remarry based on it, or she shouldn't remarry, because the man could remarry technically in either case. Now, the first one is if the get was written by hand and there's no Adam on it, and then he gave it over in front of Adam. Yeshel of Eidim ve'ein b'izman. If it has Eidim, but you didn't write the Zman, the Chamu Misakin that you need to write the date of the get, because of this certain issues that can come out as far as children that are born. Yesh b'izman ve'ein b'yel eid echad. Or if there's only one aid, and the Farshim, I think the Rishonim argue about whether that's talking about there's one aid together with the cipher writing it is the other aid, or we're talking about where it was Kasa b'ksav yadai together with Eid Echad. But all of these, Hara'elu shloisha get them psul. All these are apostle, then this is a blood kosher. And if he remarries, the blood is kosher. This is the whole sugya back in Gittin. Rebbe Lazar, our famous Rebbe Lazar, who says Eidim Mesira Karti, that the main validation of a get or a shtar is the Eidim that are witnessing. Even though there's no Eidim written on it, just you give it in front of Eidim, it's going to be kosher. And if it's not a get, but rather it's a regular shtar chayiv, you could use it to be goyim min chasim mishubadim. So we're saying over here, even a shtar that has no Eidim at all on it, you can, if you have it, if you do give it in front of other Eidim, that's enough to make it that you could be goyim from the chasim mishubadim. So how could we say, even though it's written, he wrote Ksav Yada and he brought it to Bezdin, Imamish had it confirmed by Bezdin, how could we say you can't take from Rechasim Meshubadim? If Rebbe Lazar says, even without bringing it to Bezdin, you just give it in front of Eidim, that's enough to take from Rechasim Meshubadim. So the Gemara knows there's a big difference over there. Shani Hasam the Mishas Ksibahu the Shabbat Nafshe. Over there, at the time that he gave it with a he wrote a shtar, but he didn't have an Eidim sign. Instead, he had the Eidim watching. But it was intended to be a full-fledged shtar that you could be used to be guided from Rechasim. Every shtar, we said, Achrayis Tayis for her, who we always assume that they intend to provide for Shibud, that it could be used to take away from Lekuchas. But he didn't do all the formalities. He didn't get an Eidim to sign, but instead he got the Eidim to watch. So over there, you could be Gaiva from the Chasim Meshubadim. But our case, where it's an IOU written on a napkin, at the time he wrote the IOU, he wasn't thinking of it as a shtar. He was just saying, I'm going to pay you back, and here's a piece of paper to prove to you that I agreed to pay you back. But it wasn't a shtar. It wasn't made from the beginning having in mind that there should be a shibud. It was just made as a proof. It was just an informal IOU on a napkin. So since it was never written l'chatchila to be Meshabanim, even though later on you got Bezdin to be Mekayim it, but the original intent was not to make it as a formal shtar. So having Bezdin certify it doesn't make it into something that has Shibud. Mashenkin over there, even though you never even went to Bezdin, but you eventually you gave it in front of Eidim, that's enough that it should make it that there's a Shibud, because at the time that it went into effect, your intention was that it should be a shtar. So we said in the Mishnah, if there's a guarantor on the shtar, and he signs on the shtar underneath the signature. So you write the whole shtar, then the Eidim sign, and then afterwards, at the end, Levi writes, and by the way, if Reuben doesn't pay back, I'm going to make good on it. So we said on that, we had a machlokes between the Tanakama and Benanas, Rabbi Shmuel and Benanas. Rabbi Shmuel says it is going to be chayiv, and Benanas said it's not going to be good. Let's look at the Mishnah back on Kopayin Aleph Pei Beis. You could only take, since this Arvus is only written after the shtar, you can only take from the Arev, from his own Nechasim, but you can't take from his Bnei Chayrim, because he's not on the shtar. Maisu Balaf Rabbi Shmuel, but I'm a governor Nechasim Bnei Chayrim. He said, take a packet, you can only take from Nechasim Bnei Chayrim. You can't take from this Arev at all. the lender can't have any recourse to this Arev. Amalei Lama. He asked him why. Amalei Chaynik is Echad B'Shuk, because it's like the din. If you saw Shimon was strangling Reuven in the marketplace, Levi was walking by, he saw him strangling him to get his money. Matzah Chaveri and Levi saw him. V'amalei Hanach Loy Vaniyat. Said, leave him go, don't strangle him, and I'm going to pay you. Potter. Levi is not chayiv to pay. Shalei al Manasseh Hilveu, because the original halva was not made with Levi involved. So Levi's jumping in later does not create a shiva. It's only if at the time of the halva he said, I'm going to pay, then he's going to become a shubit. Amr Bishmal, Haretzi Shiach, Yas Bedin Mamas, Shein Lecha Mitzvah B'Torah Yotzim, Pein Kam Ayin Haneveh, Haretzi Yas Bedin Mamas, Yishamish Hashem Benanas. Bishmal was Mishabeach Benanas for his ability in learning, but as we'll see, the halacha does not follow him in spite of the fact that Yishmal said that Benanas was so meduktik in Dinei Mamas. So now that's the Gemara. Amar Rav, Koydem Chisim Shtaris, Goyva Menachosam Shabbat. Rav said, if the Arvus was written before the Chasima of the Shtar, then you could take even from Nechasim Shubadim, because then the Arev is part of the Shtar. So just like the Shtar itself makes it that you could take from the borrower and from his Nechasim Shubadim, so if the Arev is before the signature, so he's part of the shtar also, and therefore you could be given from his nechasim b'shabbat. But if the arvus is after the chisim shtar is given nechasim b'nei chayr, then it's only from b'nei chayr, and like Rabbi Shmuel said. Zimne number Rav, but another time Rav said, I feel koydem chisim stars ain't a gaiva el nechasim b'nei chayr. He said, no. In any case, you could always take from the arev, even if his clause, his provision in the shtar was before the signature of the edim, it's only from Menachasim Nechayim. You can't. It's not going to be treated as part of the shtar. Kasha the Rav. The Gemara says, "What do you mean?" We just said a second ago that Rav says you can't be given from Menachasim Shabbat. It's before the signature of the edim, and now we're saying you can't. The Kasha Hakatasabe Pliny Arev, Aha the Kasabe Upliny Arev. It depends how it's written. Even if it's written before the signature, depends if you write the actual shtar and then you say as a separate sentence. Pliny Arev, Levi is the Arev. So we say it's two separate things, and the signature is only on the first part, on the actual shtar, and this is considered a separate clause. It's not part of the whole body of the shtar, even though the signature is after it. The signature is not going on that part, and therefore will not be able to take from Mishubad. But if he says Upliny, if it says and Levi is also an Arev, then it's attached to the rest of the shtar, and the signature of the Edom is going on the whole thing. And just like you could take from the Nechasim Meshubadim when it's a Milva B'Shtar, and this shtar includes as part of the shtar the Arvus, because it says Upliny, it has a conjunctive putting it together. So therefore, you're going to be able to take from the Nechasim Meshubadim in that case. That's the chiluk of Rav, why Rav sometimes says it's going to be when the Arvus is written in the shtar before the signature, sometimes it will be able to be goyva in the chas b'shalom, sometimes not. Both of them, you only goyva from the chas b'nechayr. So the Gemara at this point thinks, the Gemara then explains, the Gemara understands that Rabbi Yochanan is saying part of the shul you're not going to be able to get from the Orev's Nechasim Meshubadim. You can't take from his Lekupas. Mazel Rava. Rava asks on this, Edim achsum al she'ila shalom beget. If Edim are signed, if someone instructed someone to say I want you to write a get, and in the get, please also attach a note saying Shalom Aleichem. My wife's out in California. I have to have my friend Sheldon there. I want you to write the get and also put in there Shalom Aleichem to my friend Sheldon. So Edom Achsuman al Shila Shalom. And then the Edom sign on that thing that it said Shalom Aleichem to Sheldon. the get puzzle. Then it's the get is puzzle. Maybe all the Adam signed on was on the Shalom Aleichem, not on the actual get. Very strange thing, right? What do you need Adam for She'el Shalom? But the Adam said, okay, listen, he wants to give him a big covet. He wants to have Adam that he said Shalom Aleichem. Not the brightest Adam. It depends on whether you put a vav or not in it. If you wrote the get and you write and also say shalom to Sheldon, then it's kosher because you attach the two together. You mean both. The Adam can't say, you don't say that the Adam just meant on the Sheila Shalom because there was a conjunction. It said and, so it was all one thing. So l'chayra, we see that's Rabbi Yochanan. We see Rabbi Yochanan is mechalek. He says when you put in a vav, it's all considered part of the same thing. So why are we saying over here that even if you wrote a vav and you put the arvas is considered to be separate, and you're not going to be able to be mitzvah l'kukas. So the cause of pliny arv. Over here it's talking about where he didn't say you pliny arv, he said pliny arv. Yihachi hainu de Rav. So if that's so, what is how is he being chaylik on Rav? So Gemara Eima v'cheinam Rabbi Yochanan Einachanami. Rabbi Yochanan, it was a mistake. Rabbi Yochanan was really saying over the same thing as Rav. V'cheinam Rav, that loy shanu, it doesn't make a difference whether it's a arev or whether it's the shtar. If you say pliny arev, you're not going to. It's going to be looked at as two separate things, and you're not going to be able to be goiva for nechasim b'shubah. So we said we said in the Mishnah that this case came in front of Rabbi Shmuel where there was an arev who was written after the signature, and we said you could only be goiva from nechasim nechayr, and that's the way Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel paskin. But Bananas paskin, you can't even be goiva from nechasim nechayrin because he says the chiyuv of the arev has to come at the same time as the chiyuv of the actual loan. Amar Rabbi Bavachanu Rabbi Yochanan Afal Pisha Kilis Rabbi Shmuel as Bananas. Even though Rabbi Shmuel wrote this whole beautiful haskama to Bananas, and he said that whoever wants to learn Dinei Mamres is the best thing to learn, and Bananas is the best person to learn it by. Halacha kamaisei, the halacha is to like Rabbi Shmuel and not like Bananas. Iboyalu, correct the Gemara. B'chanak ma. Mali Amar Rabbi Shmuel. We said that the halacha is like Rabbi Shmuel by our case, where you signed on the arev afterwards. What's the din? Rabbi Shmuel is going to say that you can be goiva from an nechasim b'nei chayr, and Banana says you can't even be goiva from an nechasim b'nei chayr. What about the case where his mom is strangling someone in the street, and the arev comes by and he says, "Don't strangle him. I'm going to back it up." Maybe in that case, even Rabbi Shmuel is made that you can't be goiva from the arev, like you were saying last time when we learned the Mishnah. Probably the arev was just doing it to help out the guy. He doesn't really mean to make himself mishul, but he just doesn't want the guy to get strangled. It's pretty clear that from the context of what's going on here, that his intention was just to get the guy off of him. So is he chaylik even there? And does he chaylik? And he says that you can be got from the arev. Tashma, Dam Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yochanan, Chalak Rabbi Shmuel, Af b'Chanuk. Rabbi Shmuel was even chaylik on Chanuk, and he says, no, the arev, if he took on the responsibility, he has to be ready to pay from his nechasim nechar. Halacha k'maisei ein halacha k'maisei. Tashma, d'chi asar Rabbi Yochanan, Chalak Rabbi Shmuel, Af b'Chanuk, halacha k'maisei Af b'Chanuk. Rabbi Shmuel is chaylik even by Chanuk, and the halacha is like him, not just in the case of where he signed, where the arev signed, wrote his clause after the signature of the Eidim, but even the case of Chanuk, the halacha is like Rabbi Shmuel, that the arev has to pay. Avar Yehuda Mishmuel, Chanuk v'kanu miyavi biyadai mishtav. He said this, that we said that the Chanuk is going to be chayiv, that the arev who took upon himself to pay where he saw that the borrower was being strangled in the street, that's where the arev was made a kinyan. He made a kinyan sudar. He says, I'm going to pay, and here's my handkerchief. I'm being mishabed myself with this kinyan. The arev ba'alma loy boy kinyan. It's mashma that only in Arev, only where he's mishabed himself afterwards by a chalim. There you have to make the kinyan. But a regular Arev doesn't need a kinyan. Or pliga de Rav Nachman. This is not like Rav Nachman. The Rav Nachman, Arev, the Bezdin, hudulei boy kinyan. The only Arev that doesn't need a kinyan is an Arev which is done in a Bezdin, meaning where a guy was he was already brought to Bezdin that he owes the money, and Bezdin said, we're going to have to pay. And the guy stands up and he says, the Arab stands up and says, I'm going to take upon myself. So he does it in front of the Bezdin. So in that case, you don't need a kinyan. But any other case, it's mashma, haba alma, boy kinyan. It's mashma in every other case you do. When a regular arvus, when a person takes it upon himself, not like the case of Chanuk or the case where it's put on after the signal of the char, in the star, but a general, when a person accepts upon himself to be a guarantor, when they're sitting by the closing and he says, I'm going to be the guarantor, you don't need a kinyan. But if he ever accepts it upon himself, like the case of Chanuk, then he needs a kinyan, because then there's more reason to think he doesn't mean it as much. Arav the Bezdin loy boy kinyan, but Arav in Bezdin does not a kinyan, does not need a kinyan. Since over there's more reason to say he's really being mishabed himself, since he's doing it in Bezdin. It's a covet to be recognized by Bezdin as somebody everyone's going to see he's a respectable person who provides guarantees to people who need it. So he's it makes him feel good about himself. So therefore, he's mishabed himself even without making a literal kinyan by picking up the handkerchief. Get pasha to slichalach sechtas Bava Basra. Okay. Looks like we're not going to get to start Sanhedrin today, but we'll learn the Mishnah tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem. Shkoyach.